Arthur Morgan's relationship with Leopold Strauss in Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the most uncomfortable and revealing dynamics in the game, because it forces Arthur to confront the difference between violence committed for survival and cruelty committed through indifference. This isn't a rivalry built on hatred or betrayal, it's a slow moral reckoning that ends with Arthur rejecting not just Strauss, but the version of himself that enabled him for years. Leopold Strauss is the gang's moneylender, a role that initially seems mundane compared to robberies and shootouts. He presents himself as polite, educated, and nonviolent. He doesn't carry a gun, doesn't raise his voice, and often speaks with a tone of civility that contrasts sharply with the gang's roughness. But this surface-level gentleness masks something far colder. Strauss's business relies on targeting the desperate. Poor farmers, struggling families, sick men, and people with no realistic way to repay what they owe. Early in the game, Arthur treats Strauss's debt collections like any other job. He threatens, intimidates, and beats debtors because that's what he's been trained to do. He doesn't question the morality of it. Strauss doesn't force Arthur to act violently. He simply creates situations where violence becomes inevitable. This distinction is crucial. Strauss keeps his hands clean, while others do the damage for him. The Thomas Downs collection becomes the turning point. Arthur beating a sick man who borrowed money for charitable reasons is the moment when Strauss's work stops feeling like business and starts feeling predatory. Strauss dismisses any concern Arthur shows. To him, contracts are contracts. Responsibility ends where paperwork begins. This complete lack of empathy plants a seed of disgust in Arthur that grows as the story progresses. As Arthur becomes ill and more reflective, his tolerance for Strauss evaporates. Arthur begins to see that Strauss's loans don't just cause suffering, they prolong it. People aren't killed quickly like in a robbery. They're bled dry, humiliated, displaced, and destroyed slowly. Arthur realizes that many of the lives he's ruined through Strauss's collections never had a chance to fight back. That realization weighs heavier on him than any gunfight. Strauss's refusal to accept responsibility is what ultimately condemns him in Arthur's eyes. Strauss insists he is not violent, not cruel, not responsible for the outcomes. But Arthur understands now that intent doesn't erase consequence. Strauss may not pull the trigger, but he loads the gun and hands it to someone else. Worse, he profits from pretending he's above the violence he depends on. When Arthur finally confronts Strauss and expels him from the gang, it's one of the most morally decisive moments in the story. Arthur doesn't kill Strauss. He doesn't threaten him. He simply refuses to allow him to continue. That restraint matters. Arthur isn't acting out of rage. He's acting out of judgment. He has decided that some actions are beyond justification, even in a criminal world. Strauss's response is telling. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't show remorse. He insists that he's done nothing wrong and that Arthur is being hypocritical. And on some level, he's right. Arthur has committed worse acts by traditional standards. But that's exactly why the moment matters. Arthur isn't claiming innocence. He's claiming responsibility. He's choosing to draw a line, even if it's drawn too late. Strauss's fate after leaving the gang reinforces the point. He is later captured by the Pinkertons and dies in custody, reportedly without giving up information on the gang. This detail complicates his character. Strauss is not a coward. He is loyal in his own way. But loyalty without compassion doesn't redeem the harm he caused. Arthur likely never learns of Strauss's death, but even if he had, it wouldn't undo what Strauss represents. The conflict between Arthur and Strauss is ultimately about moral distancing. Strauss believes that suffering is acceptable as long as it's procedural. Arthur learns too late that harm doesn't become cleaner just because it's indirect. By rejecting Strauss, Arthur is rejecting the idea that survival excuses everything. This relationship also reframes Arthur's illness. Tuberculosis isn't just a physical consequence of violence, it's a moral one. Arthur is literally dying from enforcing Strauss's worldview. Every breath he struggles to take is a reminder of the cost of ignoring humanity in favor of profit and routine. In the end, Arthur's rejection of Strauss doesn't make him a good man,
That's a beautiful
but
animal.
it proves he's no longer willing to be a blind one.
Look after her well.
Strauss represents the kind of evil that hides behind paperwork and politeness, and Arthur, finally seeing clearly, refuses to carry it any further. That choice, small and quiet as it is, marks one of the most honest moments of redemption Arthur Morgan ever earns. What makes this moment linger is that Arthur doesn't forgive himself after casting Strauss out. He understands that removing Strauss doesn't erase the damage already done, but it does stop him from pretending ignorance any longer. In that final stretch of his life, Arthur chooses awareness over comfort and responsibility over profit. And that choice, more than any act of violence, defines who he becomes at the end.